Nobody in this league wants to see Arsenal become champions. That is not a fan saying it. That is Jamie Carragher, a former Liverpool player, one of the most respected analysts in the game, stating it plainly on record. And the reason that quote matters is not because it should worry Arsenal. It matters because of what it confirms. You only say that about a team that is genuinely about to do something. You do not fear the clubs that fall short. You fear the ones that are arriving. And right now, Arsenal are arriving. Let us start with a number that the entire football world should be talking about and is not talking about nearly enough. 36 Premier League matches played this season, 0 red cards, 0 penalties conceded, not one. In the entire history of this competition, across 34 years of the Premier League, no team has ever completed a full season with that record intact. Arsenal are 2 games from doing it. That is not a statistic you stumble into. That is the product of a coaching philosophy, a defensive structure, and a culture of composure under pressure that has been built over 6 years and tested in every conceivable high-stakes environment this season. Champions League semi-finals, title run-ins, last-minute VR decisions. None of it has cracked the discipline. 2 games remain. If it holds, it stands completely alone in the history of this competition. Now to Luis Enrique, because what he said this week needs to be understood properly rather than just quoted. A journalist asked the PSG manager about facing Arsenal in the Champions League final, framing the question around the fact that his team had already eliminated Newcastle, Tottenham, Liverpool and Chelsea from Europe this season. 4 English clubs, 4 different tactical problems solved. And when the journalist said, now you face another English team, Luis Enrique did not nod along. He stopped the framing immediately. With Arsenal, this is a very different team. That sentence is loaded. He is a manager who chooses every word in a press conference deliberately. He has beaten the Premier League's 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th place clubs in Europe this season. And when asked about the team at the top of that league, his instinct is not to group them with the others. It is to separate them entirely. For any supporter still wondering whether the wider football world understands what Arsenal have become under Arteta, Luis Enrique just answered that question as clearly as it can be answered. Pep Guardiola spoke this week about set pieces and physicality, and the conversation is more interesting than the headline suggests. Bernardo Silva went first, saying corners have become more like rugby, that something changed 2 years ago, and he does not like it. Guardiola, followed by admitting City were probably among the last clubs to adopt physical set-piece routines because they saw everyone else doing it. He called it boring. He said fans were already whistling at it. On the surface, that looks like a principled position against cynicism in the modern game. Look at it in context and something else is happening. These comments arrived in the final weeks of the season at the precise moment Arsenal's disciplinary record is the most discussed thing in English football. A team with 0 red cards and 0 penalties conceded is a team the physicality argument cannot be applied to. Guardiola publicly raising the physicality conversation without any evidence to attach it to Arsenal specifically is a way of seeding doubt around a club the evidence does not support. The record answers it directly. Then came the press conference exchange that told you everything about where Manchester City's season now sits. A journalist stated flatly that City's Premier League and Champions League ambitions were gone and framed the question around whether winning the FA Cup and League Cup would constitute a successful season. Guardiola interrupted. They are gone. He pushed back, not with aggression, but with the performance of surprise from a man who reads a table better than almost anyone in the history of the game. What that exchange revealed was a manager actively managing the public narrative around what success means at his club when the major trophies are out of reach. For Arsenal, watching the rival manager reframe ambition around domestic cups rather than leagues in Europe is not a small thing. It is the clearest signal yet of where power in English football now sits. Burnley's record against the top 6 this season has not received the attention it deserves in the context of Monday night. ESPN posted the graphic this week. Drew with Manchester United, drew with Liverpool, drew with Tottenham, drew with Chelsea, lost only to Manchester City. 4 draws from 5 matches against the clubs who began the season as the most powerful in the division. Mike Jackson followed that data with words that should be taken seriously at Arsenal's training ground. He said he would not want to be Arsenal knowing their opponents might down tools. He said he hoped Burnley would show the same fight they showed the week before. That is a manager telling you directly that his team will compete, not because the table demands it, not because they can avoid relegation, but because professional pride and individual dignity are not things you park when the season is mathematically settled. Burnley drew 4 times against Arsenal's rivals this year. Jackson is saying they will treat Monday exactly the same way. Arsenal need to treat that warning as exactly what it is. Patrick Vieira spoke this week about the Invincibles and said something that should sit with every Arsenal supporter right now. He said the only person who believed Arsenal could complete an entire Premier League season unbeaten was Arsene Wenger. The players knew they were good enough to win the league. But the unbeaten season as a destination was not something the squad themselves were targeting or fully believing in while they were living it. Wenger held the vision before them. That is what elite management actually looks like at its deepest level. Not motivational speeches or tactical innovations alone. The ability to see a destination that the people around you cannot yet see and create the conditions in which they deliver it anyway. The parallel with Arteta is not forced. It is obvious. Arteta has been describing a standard for this club since he arrived that the players have spent 6 years learning to match. The discipline record, the Champions League final, the title within reach. These are not things this squad stumbled into. They are the destination Arteta saw before they did. Arteta was asked this week whether he considers himself a father figure to the younger players in his squad. His answer was precise in the way his best answers always are. He said the players have great fathers and mothers. They do not need one from him. What they have is someone they can rely on. And then he located himself in the equation honestly, saying he is 44 years old, still needs great people around him, still has a lot to learn, still depends on advice and support. The phrase he used for the coaching philosophy that works is the sweetest spot between support and demand. Not coddling, not crushing, both together calibrated differently for every individual based on where they are and what they need at that moment. That philosophy is visible in the squad decisions that have defined this season. Lewis Skelly trusted in a Champions League semi-final at 8. Joker is given the environment to hit the ground immediately after joining. Odegaard managed through injury without any public pressure on his timeline. Each of those decisions reflects the same understanding of what a player needs at a specific moment. Jack Wilshere wore this shirt. He knows what it costs to fall short at Arsenal. He worked under an elite manager and experienced the feeling of a squad that came close and could not finish it. What he said this week was generous and honest in equal measure. He said he was happy for Arsenal, that he thought they would get it over the line. And then he said what matters more than the praise. Right now, he said, this team will not be remembered as a great team, but win it and they earn the right to go again. Go again and win again, and that is when you are remembered. That is the challenge sitting underneath the celebration. Not one title. What comes after? The foundation rather than the destination. Every player in that dressing room should carry Wilshere's words into the next 2 games, because he is right. Winning it is not the end of the story. It is the sentence that allows the story to continue. The Vieira versus Fabregas debate that David Raya accidentally started deserves a proper answer rather than a diplomatic one. Raya chose Fabregas in a TikTok challenge, partly on recency grounds as a fellow Spaniard who grew up watching him. The analytical case for Vieira is considerably stronger and should be stated plainly. 3 league titles, 4 FA Cups, captain of the only Arsenal side in the entire history of the Premier League to complete a season without a defeat. Dominant, technically complete, and the heartbeat of one of the greatest club teams English football has ever produced. Fabregas was a generational talent. His range of passing and vision in tight spaces were extraordinary, and he carried Arsenal almost alone through the early Emirates years when the squad around him was a fraction of what it had been during the Invincibles era. But he left for Barcelona, won his trophies elsewhere, and later won the Premier League with Chelsea. That chapter of his story remains the difficult one for Arsenal supporters. As a manager, he has done impressive work at Como, guiding them into European football. Vieira's managerial record has been more uneven. But as Arsenal players judge solely on what they delivered in red and white, it is not a close comparison. The reason this debate matters right now is Declan Rice. Because if Arsenal complete a Premier League and Champions League double, where Rice sits in the hierarchy of great Arsenal midfielders, is a conversation that demands to be had properly. This season, 35 appearances, 5 goals, 4 assists, 63 chances created. The 3/4 pitch sprint to make a block, so a goalkeeper does not need to make a save. The on his knees moment after the City defeat, saying it is not over yet, it is not over yet. The composure in the West Ham homecoming. The emotional regulation that has spread through the entire squad around him. Rice is building a legacy that belongs in the company of the names Raya was choosing between. But as Wilshere said, winning it is the sentence that places you there permanently. On transfers, two names worth being honest about. The Vlahovic rumour from El Nacional describes Arsenal as having long-term admiration for the Juventus striker, whose contract expires on July 1st. A striker of that profile arriving on a free represents exceptional market value for a club that has been looking for a physical presence in the box. Watch that space carefully, but do not treat it as confirmed. The Rafinha rumour from the same source attaches conditions that are significant enough to treat the whole thing as speculation. Selling both Havertz and Martinelli to fund that move would be a major reshaping of the squad. Arsenal's summer will be shaped entirely by what the next 3 weeks produce. A Champions League final win changes every conversation that follows. Budget, ambition, the profile of player you can attract. Everything in the window connects back to Budapest. Jamie Carragher said nobody in this league wants to see Arsenal become champions. Luis Enrique separated them from every other English club he has faced in Europe this season. Patrick Vieira told us only the manager sees the destination before the players do. Jack Wilshere said win it, then go again. The disciplinary record that has never been matched in 34 years of this competition is 2 games from being complete. Everything is pointing in the same direction. The only thing left is to deliver it.